Hi, all. I'm in for Mary Trump today. She is taking a needed break and focusing on everything we need to do in the 3 weeks that we have before the election. I know it's more than 3 weeks, it's a few days more, but I'm not counting them now because right now we are in the midst of a national disaster, two back to back. And I'm not just talking about the hurricanes. I'm also talking about the fuselage of fuckery that Donald Trump is sending our way through himself and his MAGA surrogates. We have very little time now to fight these lies and to cast our votes. And I am going to be joining our other Nerd Avengers today to talk about what we can do to maximize the next few weeks before the election and how to combat the lies, remain happy warriors, and hopefully stick the landing. So, welcome to Nerds. I just realized that I didn't play the right intro because we don't have a producer here. I thought that I just had I thought that that was the nerd intro. So let's just do this, guys. Give me literally 1 second. Um, I don't know. I'm going to consider that to be our intro, and I'm just going to bring my friends on stage. Hi, Waj. Is that our new intro?
It is now.
Sometimes we're Avengers wear capes, sometimes we polka. It's okay.
I mean, we cannot let Mercedes ever go on vacation. Mercedes, if you are watching from some fabulous exotic location, know that you are needed. Hey, Waj. Hey, Adam.
Are you? I like your
Afternoon.
screensaver. Are you like a superwoman flying in Michigan?
Well, this, as you know, is the view of the Detroit River from Canada. So I'm scoping out potential locations for my escape should we lose the election. No. But guys, we have some breaking news I want to ask you about if you've had time to study up on this. But I just saw that Ethel Kennedy, matriarch of the Kennedy family, has just passed away. And I don't know if you have any thoughts on that about her legacy, if I recall some of the good work she's done. But do you want to jump in on that, Waj? But I can also.
I just found out. I had no idea. If you ever watch these documentaries on the Kennedy, it's a fascinating family. It's one of those Greek tragedies, but also epics where you see ambition meet with fame and fortune, but also a tragedy, oftentimes through the husband. But Ethel Kennedy was like that one stable rock. If you see all the documentaries and you hear all the narratives and stories, the one person who kind of anchored that family, while other members might have gone off the edge here and there. So I think it is a big loss for American political dynasties, but also kind of a quiet power who's been there for decades. I didn't know she passed away. Thanks for telling me.
Yeah, and if you're someone of that stature, the obituaries are already, sort of pre-written, and all they need to do is, write that sort of paragraph, right? So if you don't mind, I'm gonna look now to right on my phone as we're speaking. The New York Times just published that, so I'm just gonna share with our listeners something more about that because I know that some folks may not have remembered everything about her legacy. I'm so glad that Waj talked about the role she played as an anchor, as a matriarch in that family. And to be honest, as Tolstoy would say, what did he say? What did Tolstoy say about the Kennedys? Something like every happy family is the same, but every Kennedy family is tragic in its own way.
I think he wrote that in Russian. Yes, yes.
Yes, he wrote that in Russian, and they used to say that over at the Vineyard. Okay, so here's what we have. This is an obit written by Douglas Martin, published, updated just today at 12:01 p.m. Ethel Kennedy, the widow of Senator Robert F. Kennedy and a popular and vital force in the Kennedy political dynasty, died on Thursday. She was 96. Her grandson, Joseph P. Kennedy III, announced the death on the social media site Twitter, giving the cause as complications of a stroke she had last week. He did not say where she died. I'm skipping the part about RFK Jr. Blah, blah, blah. That should not be there. I'm skipping that. Mrs. Kennedy's passion for politics was so consuming that she was often said to be more Kennedy than the Kennedys. Displaying energy and humor, she campaigned tirelessly for her husband and other Kennedys, much of the time while pregnant. Her 11th and last child was born after her husband's assassination in 1968 in Los Angeles as he campaigned for the Democratic presidential nomination. She never remarried, and her subsequent life was devoted to rearing her children, keeping alive the memory of her husband, and working on behalf of the causes he had championed. And it kind of goes on from there. I just want to say, I guess there's more I can say about the work that she's done. I just want to read this one little part. Mrs. Kennedy persuaded Harry Belafonte to teach guests the twist, a popular dance at the time, and Robert Frost to preside over a poetry contest. And this last thing, her quip about Robert Frost, his were slightly better than the rest. So be well, rest in power, Ethel Kennedy. And I'm seeing the comments. Is this a new feature, you guys, where I love this? People's comments can just pop up on the screen. Are you activating that, Adam, or is it just happening on its own?
It's DJ Watch stepping in for Spinderella Mercedes.
I love it. I love it. So, Adam, you've been involved in Democratic politics for a while. Any specific thoughts on the Kennedy family and the demise of the matriarch here?
Yeah, I think, when you first mentioned RFK Jr. and skipped over that, I totally agree. We should. However, I'm a political hack. So my first thought was, the entire Kennedy family is supporting Kamala Harris with the exception of one person, which is RFK Jr. So if you need another reason to vote, do it for her and get out there and vote for Kamala Harris in November.
Yeah, and I'm also now thinking, as you said that, I hope she cast her vote, her absentee ballot. I hope it's not sitting around her RFK Jr.'s house and he's like filling his name in right now. That's so tragic. I know I shouldn't say that, but yes, I mean, you're right. It's important not to skip over that because, we don't believe in, we have dynasties in America, but dynasties should not take over our political process. And looking at someone like RFK Jr., who is trying to claim his father's legacy when the only thing he has in common with his father is 50% of his DNA, is not what this nation is about. And I want to pivot.
I think it says a lot about the political dynasty that is the Kennedys, that, they don't need to support a Kennedy just to make sure that they're on the right side of history and move this country forward.
That's lovely. And when you look at the Trump family, there actually is only one Trump who is not supporting the family member, and that is our friend Mary. And I wish there were more of them. Maybe Ivanka is secretly voting for Kamala Harris. Well, she should really say so. Not that would redeem her much, but just a little bit. I'm speaking, though, of genes and eugenics, Waj. Do you have any thoughts?
An amazing transition. That's why they
thank you. I mean, really. Can you talk about that? And I might have a clip to throw up. Why am I referencing genes and eugenics? Why
are you representing genes and genetics? I mean, I know you're a teacher. Maybe you dabble in biology. But I think the reason why all of a sudden you went from family and patriarchy and genes is because, and I'm glad you're going to bring this clip up. This week, Donald, the person running for president, openly said yet again in his life that he wants, he wants to bring the people with good genes in America. And he's also said in the past that why are people coming from shithole countries? He's also said in the past, why do we have Haitians? They bring AIDS. And when it comes to eugenics, this is the type of stuff, folks, that Nazis used to say. This is the type of stuff that white supremacists in America, slave owners used to say, is that those with the good genes, those who belong to European stock and ancestry, and by the way, if you're Irish Catholic, you did not count as white back in the day. Eastern European Jews did not count as white. Italians didn't count as white. So they want to breed, or if you will, bring in the good whites. If that sounds kind of Hitlerish, it is because it is Hitlerish.
And when I hear good
to a communist party type system, when you look at the things that she proposes, they're so far off. She has no clue. How about allowing people to come to an open border 13,000 of which were murderers. Many of them murdered far more than one person, and they're now happily living in the United States. You know, now a murderer, I believe this, it's in their genes, and we got a lot of bad genes in our country right now. They had 425,000 people come into our country that shouldn't be here, that are criminals. And you know, one of the worst stats, 325,000 young children are missing. Can you imagine?
It's astonishing what has happened. I can't believe anyone's going to vote
Trump?
for them. Now I want to turn to the.
Yeah, Adam.
I mean, I was just going to say, we're supposed to be so far beyond this that when I hear about good genes, I'm thinking about, Lucky Brand, Calvin Klein, bad genes, some others that maybe, I wish.
Jordache, gasoline. Yeah, those brands.
It's insane.
But the fact that, it was on Hugh Hewitt's show, and Hugh Hewitt still gets on MSNBC, and Hugh Hewitt has a column at the Washington Post, and Hugh Hewitt, much like remember N-word flare-up that the head of the National Review Online did a couple of weeks ago on Megyn Kelly's podcast, the casualness with which they say this, and they are not in any way, shape, or form corrected by the conservative host, Jen, which makes me think that if you fall into the right-wing infrastructure like Adam and myself and you have for several years and researched this is not surprising. They've been into eugenics for a while. They don't outright say it, though. The think tanks, I mean, this is what these people are into. The type of Nazi eugenic gene stuff, right? The replacement theory, the good genes, the good immigrants, all code word for whiteness, white supremacy. But they don't say it out loud. And if they do say it out loud, then you have someone come in and say, that's not what we meant. It's masks off, hoods off. And it's so important, and I'm glad we're spending a little bit of time on this, is that there's no both sides here. And this is not your daddy's Republican Party. John McCain, there was always this undercurrent of the Southern strategy from the 60s onward, right? To court white grievance and rage. But McCain, I disagree with him on a lot, but there was this moment where the lady in red during one of his rallies in 2008 said, Obama's an Arab and he's not a good man, and he checked her, right? Romney also, as a Mormon, knows what it's like to be a persecuted minority, checks it. There's no check anymore. This is out in the open, and this is the type of logical next step for the right-wing movements, both here and abroad, who are openly embracing Nazi rhetoric, folks. I'm not using that term lightly. Nazi rhetoric, Hitler's quotes, poisoning the blood, Hitler's quotes, unified Reich, Hitler's language, and now good genes and bad genes. Hitler Nazi shit. Sorry for my rant, but
I love it, because I'm going to go from here to full Hitler. I mean, not me, but speaking of Hitler, you heard, and white supremacy, you heard that Donald Trump yesterday in a very sparsely attended rally in Reading, Connecticut. I don't know if you saw some of those empty seats, which I have some video of, that he is now announcing that he's going to rent out Madison Square Garden. And isn't this something like the 85th anniversary of the 1939 white supremacist rally there? And if that's what you were thinking, I'm glad you were thinking that, guys, because I think I actually have that clip right here. Let's do it if you're ready. Oops, that didn't. Oh, you know what? It's one of these I've got to upload at things. Okay, I didn't have this one ready, but here we go. Mercedes, we need you. We totally need you. Here we go. We may have to strip out this audio if it's a problem, but this is a scene from Madison Square Garden, 1939. This is what he is, he's looking at doing, right? These folks, this is it, right? Pro-American rally, also hockey night. See those folks marching? They're good fellas on both sides. Those aren't tiki torches, but pretty close. This is too close for comfort. So when he decides that he wants to do this, and I'm just gonna remove this now. Thoughts?
I think, I mean, look, that it's the Nazi Party returning to Madison Square Garden a century later, but there's either one or two things he's trying to do here. Maybe give off the appearance that he's got support in a blue state,
Right.
or hope for violence. And I think it's the latter when it comes to him.
Right.
It's disgusting that they're even allowing this to take place given history.
And when you say the violence, that reminds me of what was revealed in the new filing by Jack Smith, where there was that aide. There were the folks on the ground on the night of the election in Detroit saying that the numbers looked like they weren't going to come out well for Trump. And this is the aide there. Then he texts some guy back at wherever headquarters was who said, what's going on? And the guy on the ground said things are going to get pretty messy. And he said, make them riot, do it. Yep. This is what he does.
I think, it's good that Adam said that, because the threat of violence is still being underplayed, even though we know Donald just 4 years ago incited a violent insurrection. And if you see the playbook happening right before you, what they do is they sow the seeds with disinformation, and they're going all in. So they only have one playbook left, which has been the same playbook. Rage, racism, anarchy, carnage. They know, and they have been told even before. I think it's just worth reminding folks, even before J.D. Vance and Trump did their debates, they were told in advance that there's no such thing as Haitian immigrants eating dogs and pets. They were informed of it, and yet he persisted in doing it. And if you remember, he went to it as soon as Kamala gave him his first big uppercut. And you could tell in that first debate, he gets flustered, and he goes straight to Springfield, Idaho. They're eating the dogs.
I'm sorry, can you stop? Did you say apricot?
No. Eating the dogs, eating the pets?
No, you said gave him his first, when Kamala Harris gave him his first,
uppercut,
did you say?
Uppercut.
Uppercut. I thought you said apricot. I thought this was a new.
Maybe she did. She gave him an uppercut and an apricot. She's like, that's the
just
American
tempted
way.
him. It's like the new forbidden fruit. Okay, got you. Continue.
No, but he went all in with that. And then he also talked about Venezuela. I know, like, there's so much that he's done, and the Republican Party has done the past month, because people aren't paying attention to it. Venezuelan migrants roaming the streets, raping anyone in sight, invasion, Haitian immigrants, everything they've done against LGBTQ women. And so they're just priming the pump of violence. They're loading the bullets. And now with Florida, instead of helping people, they're spreading anti-Semitic. I mean, it's some dark humor here. They don't believe in climate change. They don't believe human beings have caused climate change, but human beings have created weather systems and space lasers to attack them. I'm like, you're so close. You're so close. But think about it. As this hurricane devastates Florida, there's a large swath of America, about 25%, that thinks the liberals and the Jews are responsible for this hurricane. You add that all up, Jen, plus the lies, plus getting a rally, plus stirring them up. What do you think is going to happen in a month, folks? We've seen this story. So
Watch, I'm not looking forward to that. Yeah, Adam, go ahead.
I was going to say two things to add on that. Speaking of Ivanka, she may be quiet now, but on January 6th, she called these individuals patriots. And to Waj's point on the debate, Donald Trump is a chicken shit. He's still refusing to debate a second time,
right? Even
after what happened the first time, even after, by all accounts from Republicans, J.D. Vance outperformed Donald Trump in his debate.
I think the idea here is, she wants a second chance to, for a knockout, and he's too, he doesn't want to get punched in the nose, the uppercut that you're talking about, or would that be, I don't know,
or apricot, fine,
or apricot. But speaking of the, you mentioned, it's hard for me to believe it. I mean, I knew Marjorie Taylor Greene thought we had the space laser, but as you know, Waj, I lent it to you, and you haven't actually returned it, but. It's kind of no joke, because I thought people, when they said, well, they're controlling the weather, I kind of thought that it was just sort of like they're saying, oh, the Democrats are trying to make it rain on the places where Republicans would vote, or, and it's really tragic that they would be saying that. But you are right. I mean, this is anti-Semitic, scary stuff. And I actually have this clip, and it's shocking to me. And I just want to play this one.
Yeah, look, there's always been disaster politics that we've had to deal with in the emergency management industry. Saw it in Katrina, dealt with it in COVID, obviously. But the misinformation that we're seeing being put out now is very dangerous. At some point in time, we'll see people tell residents not to evacuate because the hurricane's not really hitting you. And that's really where it's headed. Obviously, you have people saying that, FEMA doesn't have money because, we sent money to Lebanon. Of course, FEMA doesn't send any money to Lebanon. That's a completely different department, in the State Department who does that. We have people saying that, the reason the hurricane hit North Carolina is they sent it there because there's a silicone mine and they want to take everybody's property. There are people saying, hey, I've never in my lifetime seen a hurricane develop in the middle of the Gulf and go to Tampa. You're right. The reason you haven't seen that in your lifetime is it happened over 100 years ago. And then obviously we have my favorite, Marjorie Taylor Greene, who runs the Mensa caucus, talking about the fact that we have a weather machine, which, if there are aliens watching and they're looking at all of this, they can definitely confirm there is no intelligent life in Congress with Marjorie Taylor Greene talking about a weather machine being used for politics. So it's very dangerous while people are trying to evacuate, make decisions what's best for their family. And so, that's why Democrats, Republicans, emergency managers have to combat this. And by the way, there are also foreign actors involved here. Don't think a lot of these accounts aren't foreign governments trying to just cause more confusion and more division here amongst America.
You got to love Jared Moskowitz and the Mensa caucus there.
Yeah, he was great. He was great.
But, there is some truth to that, guys, because I actually did see the machine that is causing these storms. Have you seen it? Do you want to see it?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, it's right here. I just have to pull it up right here. There it is.
Oh, there you go.
Do you know what that is, Waj, for the uninitiated?
What is that exactly?
That is a drilling platform, for oil.
See, because for a second I was like, the Jews have much better cultural aesthetics. I was very disappointed. I knew you'd make it like prettier and nicer. That's like a Donald MAGA-ish like Jew space laser.
That's man-made climate change. There it is.
Jet, if we could spend a little bit of time on this, I know we laugh and we have to laugh because the humor needs to be cathartic. This is an extension of the conspiracy of the Great Replacement, which is the underlying foundation of everything we've talked about in the last 10 minutes: the eugenics, the good genes, the bad immigrants, the Haitians. The conspiracy goes like this, folks. It comes from Nazis and the KKK, originated in Europe, came to America, went back to Europe, and it says the Jews, and you always have to say with thunder and lightning, like the Jews, are the head, the nerve center of this international cabal that is using liberals, Muslims, Black people, immigrants of color, women, and LGBTQ to deliberately weaken the white good genes population. And they're working with in tandem. And the reason why the Jews are the nerve center, and this is important, is because Blacks and Browns and Muslims don't have the good genes. We're not smart enough. So the brains of the operation, Pinky and the brains, are the Jews, using us inferior savages to take over. And when you hear stuff like Soros is controlling the weather system, Jewish space lasers, and now in the last week, weather systems, this is what they're talking about. They literally believe that liberals run by the Jews and then all of us here are deliberately creating these man-made artificial systems that are specifically targeting the perpetual victims, which are MAGA. Now you say, well, Jad, that sounds batshit crazy. And I give you the clip that you just saw with Jared Moskowitz.
What concerns me too, Waj, about this is now, there have been so many climate change deniers, the inconvenient truth that Al Gore wrote about, and no one wants to face it. They would say, oh, it's hot. Oh, look, today it's cold. I guess there's no global warming, all the jokes. Well, now it's here. And since people cannot deny what's right in front of them, it's like, I was talking about this morning on the show, it's like this ideological myth. It's like this primitive, superstitious way of saying, we're going to ignore science and we're going to see, everyone sees these changes. So we're going to attribute it to the out group, we're going, and so instead of doing what we could actually do based on science to mitigate and to protect against some of the irreversible effects of climate change, they're going to use it to make people miserable, to divide people, and to have people suffer. So there's grievance, and they can direct that grievance against the groups they don't like to claim power. And just watching it, I don't have a political science degree. I just have eyes and ears and friends like you guys who I can talk through this stuff with. But it's so obvious what they're planning. But what I'm not smart enough to do, despite the fact that I'm Jewish and I'm supposed to be at the brain center. So let me ask you, my brown friend, what is the way that we can, what do we do, Waj? Like, I don't get invited to the global cabal meetings because if we're so flipping smart, let me just say, if the Jews are so smart that we can control the weather, then why can't we control the people who are against us lying about all this other shit that we're not doing? Answer me that.
And also, there's a lot of Jews in Florida. So a lot of old, wealthy Jews who retired in Florida. So what you're saying is that the Jews in Florida who literally moved to Florida to retire and live the rest of their lives in peace and comfort have deliberately used their own weather system to destroy themselves in their homes.
We love to play the victims, though,
It defies logic. But I want to say this before we're handing it on to Adam. Yesterday I talked to David Korn. David Korn is, old school, great journalist, Mother Jones, the DC bureau chief. And he came out with a piece this week in Mother Jones where he talked about these lies and all these lies that we've talked about today. And he said the deliberate strategy of Donald Trump is to not just distort the facts, but to distort reality. And he says in the past 9 years, he has so successfully distorted reality for 30% of Americans, folks. That's it's not just him. It's Donald, J.D. Vance, the GOP, and the entirety of the right-wing ecosystem. Just the clips that Jen played today. That has radicalized 30%, folks, of the American population, 44 to 46% of the electorate who live on Earth 3. And the analogy he gave in his piece, which I recommend people reading, which was very sober, is he connected it to Mussolini and Hitler and fascism. This is what they did. And connecting all the dots that we've talked about in the first 30 minutes of the show today, if you enrage the base, if you keep them perpetually hopped up on like anger and victimhood, if you create an alternative reality where they trust no one but the strong man, in this case Trump, and now his entire right-wing ecosystem, they will believe anything. And they will believe that the deep state stole the election and that Donald Trump won. And as such, they are priming the pump for right-wing authoritarianism, minority rule. And so for the rest of us, and we've said this on this show, and I think it bears repeating, Jen and Adam, is there are some liberals I've talked to and a lot of folks who think if Kamala wins, which she has to, Donald will be gone. And what I'm telling them, this is not going to be the knockout uppercut. This is going to be a major weakness for Donald and MAGA, but this is a 10-year, 20-year fight. And what David told me yesterday, he quoted that Springsteen song, The Long Walk Home. We are on a long walk, but the long walk doesn't have to be lonely. We have the numbers, but we have to organize and we have to put in the mindset, folks, that this is not a knockout blow in a month. This is us weakening them, maybe one knockout. MAGA's going to get back up, especially if Kamala wins. You can imagine what they're going to do to her for 4 years. We have to think this is a 20-year plan to save our country, to go forward, and to systematically weaken this 30%. We can help save, quarantine the 30% by systematically weakening this right-wing movement that has created an alternative reality where the rest of us have bad genes and are enemies and invaders. Sorry for my second rant today.
I mean, you answered the question, which goes to show that the great replacement theory ain't great and no one's getting replaced. I mean, that really helped me think about, the marathon, so to speak. You call it the long walk. And I'm a huge Springsteen fan. Adam, is it okay if I use this opportunity now to talk about some of the stuff that's been in the news, but we haven't talked about as nerds, and also given your own Ukrainian background? And that is...
Yeah, absolutely. Just to add one thing to
sorry,
said,
Adam.
And I'll put, because we're on Mary's show, I'll put in parentheses, Donald. Trumpism is here to stay, right? Like it's going to be here for 10, 20, however many years, the long walk home. I couldn't agree with that more. If Donald loses in November, which I believe he will, and I hope he does, this fight is, long from over.
Yeah, I mean, and you make such a good point. Donald Trumpism, it's here, and even without, unfortunately, like I want to believe that if in this case, if you cut off the head of the cobra, it doesn't regrow a head. But unfortunately, there's way too much invested in him,
Well,
and
apparently it could regrow an ear.
Oh, I mean, you do make a point. So
Well played, Adam. Well played.
not too soon for that one. So yeah, so
Well, he was supposed to be a changed man after that, and we never saw it, right? So we got to be honest.
yeah, I mean,
And also, Jen, the point that Adam just made, and it goes back to, and I think this is gonna be a good pivot, a transition, if I may give you an assist. The failure of media and establishment media to recognize the threat that has literally been in front of our face the whole time.
right.
And when Adam said that, I'm so glad he said that, because what we were told by certain individuals who I won't name, Katie Tour and others, was, no, remember this, folks. I have a long memory. I keep the receipts. He's a changed man. He looks, wait for it, serene. You're going to see a different tone tonight. So I watched the debate. And I remember, not the debate, the RNC, where he came out with the diaper on his ear, right? They gave him a prepared speech. And I remember I tweeted, Donald lasts 30 to 40 minutes before he self-destructs. I've seen him for 9 years. He was reading the speech. First 35 minutes, okay, pretty good. The next hour and a half, he adds 9,000 words to the prepared speech that if he gave this speech would have actually helped him in the polls, and goes on and mocks and ridicules everyone, makes fun of Nancy Pelosi, whose husband survived an assassination, and was exactly the Donald that we knew. And you would think that establishment journalists, access journalists, would have learned. And David told me yesterday, David Korn, who was talking about this new reality, as a journalist, he said, our peers and colleagues have failed. Corporate media has failed. He said, we're behind the 8 ball now. We could have gone ahead of it. And we still fail because Bob Woodward, if I may just rant about Bob Woodward, everyone's celebrating Bob Woodward, not me, because Bob Woodward's revelations, just in time of his new book, just ahead of the election, gave us all these revelations of how Donald gave Putin COVID testing while Americans were dying, while his administration was, if you remember, denying PPP supplies to our medical healthcare personnel who were dying on the front line. But he gave Putin stuff. This is a guy, there's so many revelations, and I'm sitting there thinking to myself, Bob Woodward, you also last time sat on the revelation where you had the audio tape where Donald literally confessed that he knew COVID was deadly and downplayed it. And you didn't tell us, you told us 7 months later, after hundreds of thousands of Americans had died, and you did it just to get the bestseller list, to get the access. And imagine how many people would have lived, Jen. Imagine if all this information about what Donald talked to Putin, folks, 7 times at least in the last 4 years as a private citizen, while sitting on a treasure trove of secret documents. By the way, he's indicted. What did he tell Putin? Did he give national security secrets? Was there quid pro quo? All of this stuff, maybe if people knew about it, I don't know, Jen, 2 months ago, don't you think they would have informed the decisions before early voting? Sorry.
Okay, let me. Go ahead, Adam.
The crazy thing about it is Woodward's already cemented his place in history in this country. So what the hell is he doing?
Oh, let me just, okay. So I hear you both, but allow me to use this as an opportunity to hate a little bit on Merrick Garland, because it's not hate, but the reality is this, because you've already said one of the things that's come out in this book called War by Bob Woodward is that he was giving, it wasn't COVID tests, it was a COVID testing machine made by Abbott Labs. So for many people could be tested, and these were things that would be used at a doctor's office. So he gave that to Vladimir Putin, who is our major adversary and who was this is like he did this 6 months after he was trying to get Vladimir Zelensky to lie, right, about Joe Biden to help him win the election, right? So he's already, and this is a guy who's always acting like Russia, 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 I'm not doing anything, right? So
if he sent one test, we should be outraged.
Right. And let me just say that Bob Woodward shouldn't have been the first person who found out that Donald Trump was sitting in Mar-a-Lago talking to Putin. And Bob Woodward shouldn't have been the first person to find out that Donald Trump, another revelation, was asking Vladimir Putin, should I give aid to Ukraine. Because the person who should have known that, my friends, is the special counsel that Merrick Garland did not appoint in March of 2021 when he should have. And it's Merrick Garland who did not pick up the Mueller report and continue where Mueller left off, because I shall remind you, in July of 2019, the day before that quid pro quo phone call between Donald Trump and Vladimir Zelensky was the day that Robert Mueller testified finally before Congress about the Mueller report and said the problem is Vladimir Putin is still up to his tricks. So I will submit to you, fuck Merrick Garland. Now, I now want
to your Garland point.
Yes.
One thing.
Yeah.
You know, I'm a Ukrainian American, and look, I agree with you. I've been highly critical of him when Merrick Garland went to Ukraine. I criticized him because that's nice, but he needs to be here doing exactly what you're talking about. And there's just been so many missed opportunities. It's extremely frustrating.
You know, who also said it after Merrick Garland, according to Bob Woodward, Joe Biden in the book. That's one of the other.
Oh, yes. Oh, right. One of his biggest regrets was hiring Merrick Garland, and he also called Netanyahu some profanity. So I want to play this. This is Andrea Mitchell talking about that piece, specifically what Adam was referencing about Ukraine. And I think this one came out yesterday because there's a little bit of a drip factor of this parts of the book because it hasn't actually come out yet. I think it's like next week or the week after. So here we go.
The New York Times reported that in his first year in office, Donald Trump, in his first meeting in Hamburg, Germany, with Vladimir Putin, having been briefed by his then Secretary of State, Rex Tillerson, on how tough to be with Putin in that meeting, that in that meeting, a year before the sort of notorious meeting, the summit that they had in Helsinki, he asked Vladimir Putin, reportedly, according to the New York Times, should I be arming Ukraine? And Putin said, no, I don't think that's a good idea. And Tillerson came out and in real time told the other advisors standing there, we have a real problem. So there's a pattern here.
Okay. If Rex Tillerson knew that, why didn't Merrick Garland know that, you guys? Okay, so this is, I'm not going to defend Bob Woodward, but let's not pretend that Bob Woodward is some kind of genie who can find sources that nobody else can. That's my deal.
Well, I was just going to say one of the other issues is there was not a protecting of information in the integrity of our government under Donald Trump, right? In terms of information sharing and what was left behind and what was not taken in boxes and what was shredded. It's curious who knew what when during that transition, because this is a transition like we've never seen before.
Mm-hmm.
Not to have his back. It's just, I don't know. Was that memo sitting in a box at Mar-a-Lago?
And also, in addition to that, the Merrick Garland, I think we can all agree, and I think history will prove it, and history has already proven it, was the wrong person at the wrong time, wrong man for the job. And what infuriates me, I was talking to a few friends about this last night, the difference between oftentimes Democrats and Republicans and the way they play politics is Democrats are oftentimes too nice to their own detriment. Like, you will never see a Republican say, I'm going to appoint a centrist. I'm going to appoint a Democrat just to pacify them, right? Like I would have put anyone else. I would have put
like a Jamie Raskin. This is why Republicans win. Like a Jamie Raskin. Republicans speak to their base. They know who put them there, right? And we play these games and try to appease everybody, and we lose.
And we don't appease anybody.
Right.
And you should have put someone who was a bulldog.
And we end up pissing off our base.
That's right.
Especially, Jen and Adam, if you know, and we all knew that the entire right wing, thanks to Donald, is a criminal enterprise, why would you put a slow-moving, cautious, conservative institutionalist as the attorney general while democracy is on the line?
You know why? Because even though he acts like he is this sort of keeper of institutions, he was a deeply ambitious man. You don't get nominated for the U.S. Supreme Court because you're sitting by your phone doing your hair and nails and someone calls you up and says, hey, how would you like to be in the running? You're getting people lobbying for you, talking you up. And so when he was denied that seat, because we know, that he felt, or someone felt, he was entitled to something else as a consolation prize. And fuck that. That's not, I mean, I'm sorry, my
But also,
profanity is,
to your point, Jen, it's such a good point because, look, the Department of Justice, right, is not political. However, if you look at how they politicized Merrick Garland and the Supreme Court, he actually had even more, whatever you want to call it, more wind at his back going in there.
That's right.
To do exactly this after what they did with him in the Supreme Court.
But he's a judge. I mean, the thing is, there are some people who specifically either made for, sort of like born for a certain temperament, and people who grow into it. And he's maybe both. He's just a cautious, thoughtful man. That is not the job description for an advocate. Advocates should be thoughtful.
He would have made a great Inspector General at DOJ.
Yeah.
And also, everyone who had faith in him, I never did. 1 month left to the election. What did he do? And we just teased Jen about all the indictments that Donald Trump has that people have forgotten. I mean, he has about 37 indictments just based off the Mar-a-Lago case alone, where
well, that's been dropped. I mean, for now, because
right? But
a technicality, right?
It's a huge scandal. It's a huge scandal that if Kamala did it or any Democrat did, you went out of your way to steal these documents. The FBI for nearly a year begged you to bring it back. You refused to, and then you probably engaged in a conspiracy to hide these documents to evade an investigation. And then you're sitting on top of this information, these national security, where our agents on the field are compromised, our operations are compromised. And now we just found out you're talking to Vladimir Putin, enemy of America, at least 7 times. And you have a history of quid pro quo. Hello, Ukraine, Zelensky. And by the way, there's also generation. Oh, and we have the phone call where you asked for 11,000 votes and won just to win Georgia. I mean, it's
before I pivot, ask Adam the thing what he said about burner phones. Well, do you know that at least one of those phone calls actually happened at Mar-a-Lago? I just can't. Right? Okay, so Adam, you mentioned the burner phones. That's another thing that came out from the Woodward book. Can you talk about that?
I mean, you probably have more details than I with a 18-month-old, I saw burner phones in the headline, and I was like, of course there's burner phones. It's just one of these things. The difference between us and Republicans, right, is that Republicans are using conspiracy theories literally to cover up their criminal conspiracies. And we're sitting here, anything that we say that we think we believe sounds like a conspiracy, but it ends up becoming true, right? So of course there's a burner phone.
Well, Waj, I know you've got to go, but I mean, you've definitely maximized your time here. So thanks for joining us.
I was supposed to say only 15 minutes. I stayed 40.
It's like a Hanukkah miracle.
Yeah, thank you all for watching. Please subscribe. I have to say this. Subscribe to this. Like it. It goes a long way. Support Adam's show, Jen's show, and watch Democracy-ish on tomorrow at 12 p.m. live.
On Danielle Moody's YouTube. Okay, bye, Waj.
Thanks, Waj.
Yeah, so I like this burner phone thing, Adam, because I could almost play Mad Libs with you, right? Like I could be like, pick a country. Okay, pick a ruthless dictator.
There was more than one, I believe, right?
Well,
there was a story out yesterday about, who is it? Like the Crown Prince that had
MBS. Yeah. Right. So apparently and this one I actually didn't read, but I've only heard pieces of it. So I probably have to look at the
It was like a bag of burner phones, and one of them said like Trump 45 or something.
Yes. Like that. Yeah. Like he wanted to get on I forgot who was with him and saw this, because obviously I don't know if it was a U.S. diplomat so I don't know the source of the story, but he wanted to get Donald on the phone. They said, we'll call him. Hold on. And they said, bring me my phones. And then there was this bag, this goodie bag. I mean, right. So who is he? I mean, what this all comes down to is many of us thought this is one of the most selfish people ever. That he is, I'm speaking of Donald Trump, that he loves flattery and that he is embarrassed by being exposed. So it could be a carrot or a stick that would get him to monetize our national security secrets and our foreign policy objectives. I mean, we literally know, and I trust Rex Tillerson and this reporting. Let's just assume it's true because it it sounds true, and it's the way he talks about Putin, his relationship with him, that he was asking him for advice on what to do. And now we also know, that he's having these private phone calls where he asks people to leave the room. I mean, what more do we need? I mean, there's some people obviously who are unreachable, but what more do we need for the press, at least, to say this man is compromised and he's a danger to the republic? When?
I mean, if you take just the burner phone story, and you just think of everyone throughout this country, really, there's no one that should have a burner phone except maybe someone in law enforcement, right? What's the need for it? And when you're talking about a sitting president of the United States or a former president of the United States, anything that they have should be something provided to them by the United States government, our intelligence agencies, something that can be, as a bad state actor cannot get into, and so forth. So this is just crazy. And this is just, once again, one more thing that one phone that we're hearing about, now, not then, right? And it just begs the question, how much more is there? I mean, it's unbelievable the number of things that we're still learning about 4 years later.
And for me, a lot of this goes to what you're saying, all these pieces, why the secrecy? Like, why the burner phones? What is he trying to hide? And I think what he's trying to hide is right out in the open, that he wants to be not a dictator for a day, but a dictator for his lifetime. I mean, this is what he wants.
And I assume most of this, again, this is an assumption, but, these are all financial ties too, right? And compromise and so forth. I mean, there's no other reason why, when Jared Kushner is getting the type of money that he's getting from the Saudis, and you start to piece these pieces of the puzzle together, it paints a story, whether some of them are connected or not. It seems like most of this is all connected.
And, it's money, and it's also, he wants money and he wants power, and he mostly, he also wants, sort of the icing on that cake, if you will, is the adoration. And I don't know if you saw this. It's coming around now. I guess it was a video interview from February of 2024 with the former Prime Minister of Australia, Malcolm Turnbull. And it characterizes who Donald is and what world leaders think of him. And I mean, this is kind of incredible. If you can listen, and we can maybe talk on the other side to this one.
See Trump with Putin, as I have on a few occasions. He's like the 12-year-old boy that goes to high school and meets the captain of the football team. My hero. It is really creepy. It's really creepy. Now,
and that struck you at the time?
Oh, absolutely. It struck everybody. It was like you could touch it. It was creepy. The creepiness was palpable.
Are you trying to say they're having a bromance?
No, I'm not saying. I'm just telling you what I saw. Regrettably, the Republican Party under Donald Trump, and particularly the right wing of the Republican Party, are very sympathetic to Vladimir Putin. I mean, I've been with Trump and Putin. Trump is in awe of Putin. Tyrants are often popular. You see, the key to democracy, liberal democracy, is that it empowers the majority, but it also, through the rule of law, constrains the majority. And if you get to the point where anybody who can muster a majority, and I don't think Trump can do that, by the way, but anyone who can muster a majority is given absolute power and then can do whatever they like to the minority, that's not a democracy. That is a tyranny. That is an autocracy. Even if it's got the support of 51% of the population, that is not what makes a democracy.
I mean, I get chills listening to that. I don't know if it's also the delivery, but the content is incredible. But it's so true. I mean, like, you can see it day by day in the Trump White House, right? Like, look at the giant envelope that Kim Jong-un sent, right? Contents unknown, also was trolling, Donald Trump and his hand size. But like this interview makes me think about the number of communications that are still unknown. I mean, you had Rand Paul going to Russia to deliver communications to Putin on behalf of Donald Trump, something that John McCain talked about. It's terrifying. And this is probably one of the best clips that summarizes everything that is at stake in a matter of days.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I could have. I think I chose that one because to hear Kamala Harris say it, or to hear someone here say it, doesn't have the same effect as you have someone of his stature kind of looking in at us. And
It's
also,
incredible too, because we hear about this all the time, and sometimes we get a clip of some of the world leaders looking at Ivanka pretend to be like in control and part of the conversation. But to actually hear it on the record and delivered the way that was, it's remarkable.
So it also struck me when I listened to that, because it's coming out now, probably because of this Woodward book, but that was February, and that was before the U.S. Supreme Court gave the office of the president more power, and boy,
And when that happened, I was kind of like, all right, Joe Biden can do whatever he wants, right?
Yeah, but then again, this is like the paradox,
right?
So
that's not who we are.
Yeah, it's not who we are. That's not what we mean by getting tough. So I want to, since we talked a lot about the top of the ticket people, characters, but I don't know if you've been following what's been going on in Arizona with the Carrie Lake campaign against Ruben Gallego.
There was a debate last night.
I have some clips from that. Did you get a chance to see any of that, or at least any of those clips at all?
Some of them. There's one that's my favorite. We'll see if you have it on the border.
I have two.
I don't want to ruin it.
Oh, I don't think I have the one on the border. I've got two.
So last night during the debate, Gallego said to Carrie Lake that and to the voters that Carrie Lake has gone to Mar-a-Lago more times than she's visited the border, which I thought summarized everything.
I got two, and the first one is just for laughs, and the second one is a little more serious. So let's, this one is great, Adam.
I want to make sure that UVF is protected. I have many friends who are here. They're my friends today because of UVF. And I have many of my friends who have had children and experienced the joy of motherhood and parenthood because of UVF.
Her brain
That's
is
like when
empty.
I type a voice note on my phone.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's like I hit send anyways, and then everyone's like, is he okay?
So how could she not know, Adam? I mean,
that is insane.
In vitro fertilization.
But also, I think it just once again shows how terrifying all of this is, that there are individuals in states that are very split. And it could come down to this. Now, I think Gallego is going to win by a pretty good margin, and I think that the presidential will be a bit slimmer, but that Kamala Harris and Tim Walz will prevail. I had lunch with Gallego about a week ago, and
amazing.
He's very happy with where the race is right now, and feels very confident. But is doing everything he can to make sure that that they pull the top of the ticket over.
Well, that's nice, instead of pushing it up a little bit. So here's the other one, and there's so much to say about this. I promise not to comment. I'm just going to let you talk about this. This is another good one.
Denial about climate change, but we should not be surprised by that. She's still in denial about the 2022 election. And now I give you 1 minute. You have 1 minute. Will you finally tell the people of Arizona? Did you win or lose that election?
Can I talk about water really quickly? Because
I'm going to give you 30 seconds to respond, and please talk about water.
Are
30
we
seconds,
also talk about water separately?
We're running out of time.
Comments?
I mean, first of all, I will say this. I think a lot of people are familiar with him, but he's incredible. And sort of your hypothesis or suspicions about how great he is come true when you meet him and talk to him, and you hear about all of his military service and the time that he spent overseas. And one of the things that he has going for him in Arizona is a number of his colleagues and Republicans who are military members and former military members that served with him are out there as surrogates campaigning throughout the state for him.
Oh, wow.
So, he's a remarkable guy, and he's super intelligent, but I hadn't seen that clip, and
that's going to be my new thing when I don't want to talk about something. I'm just going to say, can we talk about water for
Yeah, and I think that clips are clips. Like actually at lunch, we talked a lot about water because there are potential water problems down the road in Arizona. I think like 2026, where some of the things that they do farm there they're gonna need to actually bring water in. But but he's been talking about that and working on that, day after day after day. And she's trying to deflect from a very serious question that a number of individuals have already been indicted on.
And it reminds me too, Adam, I mean, it's the same thing that JD Vance and Mike Johnson and others try to do when you ask them, or was that even, I'm trying to think of Tom Cotton as well. When you say, but did Donald Trump lose in 2020? They want to talk about something else. And this whole, there is nothing to me more fundamental than someone respecting the democratic process and not being able to say that you lost an election. I don't understand how anyone would consider them viable. I do think that is hurting Donald Trump with the Republicans that I know. I don't know what your thought is on that.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, I think there's a number of Republicans who, I think it was either you or Waj earlier in the show that said this is not like, our dad's Republican Party. And there are still a number of those individuals, Republicans, who view themselves as Republicans and want their Republican Party back. And I think those are the individuals that are naturally just not going to vote for Donald Trump this time. I mean, he's the oldest presidential candidate in the history of our country. Not that there's anything wrong with being old, but a few months ago, Donald Trump said that being the oldest candidate in history is unacceptable. The number of indictments, the disinformation, the danger that him and the other Republicans cause. One of the biggest problems that we have, if you think about it this way, is this disinformation and these lies. They do two things. One, they get people killed. Two, from a political standpoint, they change the perception of voters. Voters believe these things. When they were pushing that Hillary Clinton was part of the Muslim Brotherhood, there weren't actual votes changed in a voting machine, but the perception of voters were changed. And when people went in, they voted for Donald Trump because they believe this disinformation. And as we've seen many times in October, they start to push the whole caravan, right? And that got people killed. That turned into a shooting in a synagogue in Pittsburgh. And you had people on Fox News, anchors like Laura Ingraham, that were pushing that lie that got people killed. So this is, again, it's the long run, the long walk home, as Waj said, but we have got to defeat Donald Trump in November.
I mean, that is almost a good way to end the show, but we got a couple minutes and I want you, since you're watching sort of holistically, I did mention Arizona in the Senate, because I mean, you know better than anyone else how important it is to keep the Senate and where those numbers are. So we know, you said Gallego is feeling very solid. Who can we put our support behind if we have an extra few dollars or time to make phone calls? Who in the Senate do you think can win and would really benefit from this?
I think it's almost a hard question to answer sometimes. If you go back to what Michelle Obama said a long time ago, if we focus on some of these local elections and we get 2 people out to vote for Jen for school board in Michigan, they are naturally going to be voting in the Senate race and in the presidential race for the Democrats. And one of the things that we have that I think is an opportunity, but also a danger this year, is we can't take things for granted. In Maryland, right? We could lose the Maryland Senate race because we take Maryland as a blue state, but we have a former governor running who is still the most popular former Republican governor in the country, right? In a state like Nebraska, we have an independent running who could help us keep the majority. But then we have House races in Virginia, like Eugene Vindman, that was downgraded and put closer to Republicans today by Cook. So, I mean, I think that it's just one of these things where it is anywhere someone believes they can be an added benefit. And whether you're an introvert or an extrovert and you want to write a postcard or knock on a door or you don't want to make a call, an hour of your time will always be more valuable than $1 to a campaign right now.
I love hearing that. Okay, so it is, you heard Adam Parkhomenko say it, it's do something. And it's do anything. Don't get obsessed like I am about this race or that race. If you just get someone to go to the polls on the issue that matters to them.
If you can vote today, go vote today.
Oh, right. I've already voted, right? I've done early voting.
But I'm
Adam,
voting.
go vote. Go vote today. Vote today and help someone else vote. and come up with a plan. And thank you guys for joining us. I promise not to play the wrong music next time. I understand. I understand what I did.
Fun.
Have a great day, everyone. Thanks.
Thanks, Jen.
Thanks, Adam.